Hello, I'm Justin Shaw, and I'm going to be talking to you about taking sci-fi assets to build our sci-fi level from 3ds Max into Unreal. You're going to start in this section, and we're going to go to New Projects. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into First Person. And we're going to make sure we don't have any starter content. And we're going to save this, instead of in its Assets folder, we're going to go to Desktop. And you're going to be saving this inside of, you have a document, a level that you created, or a set of files that you created, and you're going to go into Sci-Fi Level, and you're going to go to UE Saves. And we're just going to save this, and we're going to call it Sci-Fi Level. Go back one so it knows where we are. UE Saves. We're going to name this Sci-Fi Level. Just put project in there, just hit create, and I'm going to give you a rundown of basically how to deal with Unreal, pulling in items and building your world and deleting things around the world. Should be pretty straightforward. Okay, now that we've got the level loaded up, I'm going to explain some pieces. I'm going to go through and I'm going to delete some assets. It's a little different than moving it around in 3ds Max. I right click to look inside of the window, and I use ASDW to move around, kind of like a first-person shooter game. And I press Q to go down and E to go up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select some of these objects inside the screen by holding Control, and I'm going to press Delete to delete them, because I don't want any of these extra assets. I just want to have my own stuff. I'll show you faster ways to get rid of things later. And we want to get rid of the floor. Now this leaves us some things, and we're going to talk about what each one of these things are as we go through the videos, but I want to start by importing our own objects. I'm going to go to Import, and I'm going to find my file, and Sci-Fi Assets, and I'm going to go for Wall. I'm going to double click. It's going to ask me some questions. It doesn't need a skeletal mesh. It doesn't need to auto-generate collision because we added the UCX file. Convert scene, we're fine with that. I'm going to hit import to all. Now our base object is down here, and if I double click on it, it's going to open up the editor. I move around just like I do the other one, and it's by default giving me the materials from Max, except for Max always sets the materials up. It doesn't quite import them correctly. So when I'm working inside Unreal, I need to reset up all the pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my collision. My collision is there. That means when I walk through this object, it won't go away. I'm just going to hit X. I'm going to drag this object into the world. And it's pretty large, but the materials aren't set up correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, New. I'm going to add a new folder, and I'm going to call this Maps. And I'm going to underscore it Sci-Fi. Right click, New. I'm going to call this Assets. Okay, now I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to create Textures. Close enough. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the texture files, hold down Control, and I'm just going to select them. I'm going to double click on this material ball real quick and bring it to the material editor. I middle click to move, and I scroll wheel to drag around. I'm going to bring my normal map to the front, and I'm going to drag these maps that I've put in. And now I've got the object here, and it's a circle, and I really don't like that. It's a preview of the material. Okay, so I've got my object, I've got this preview of the material, but I don't really like that. I can switch to different ones, but if I select my object, if I just click it down here, and I press the teapot, it's going to convert it into this scene, making it a lot easier to deal with. Middle mouse button to move. In the material editor, they view things differently, which is a little bit strange, but this is way too reflective to be using. So what I'm going to do is I've got my normal map, and I'm just going to break these channels. I'm going to hold down Alt and click, and I'm going to start with my normal map. I'm just going to drag it in to my normal, and I'm going to look at it, see what it gives me. Yep, it pushes things out, but I'm going to make that push things out a little bit more. I'm going to hold down M and get a multiply. I'm going to hold down M and click, and I'm going to drag this into A, and I'm going to click on the multiply, double click, and it'll bring me two numbers. I want to multiply this times 2. And I'm going to drag this into normal. This should double my normal map offset. It'll increase how much my normal map is worth. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to grab this, and because this is a PSD, I'm going to drag the material into base color. But it has an alpha channel. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down L and I'm going to put LARP. What a LARP does is it's a linear interpolate. It's kind of like a gradient. I'm going to plug the alpha into here. That's my mask. I'm going to hold down 1, and 1 is a white color material, or just the number 1. If I plug it into metal, metal is going to become really metallic. But it doesn't have anything. It hasn't changed anything. It just told it it's metallic. But if I hold down, still on 0, in a second, let me set it to 1. Now we're getting some metal. I'm going to, if I hold down Alt and press W, I can duplicate one of these. I'm going to drag this and I'm going to put it in not specular but roughness. If anything is metallic, specular doesn't work. So I'm going to plug it into roughness. And this is going to be really glossy. I'm going to unplug this piece, and I'm just going to, so I've got 1 in metallic. 1 means really rough, so there's no shine. If I put 0, it's going to be very smooth because there's no roughness. And I'm going to change the metallic to 0. Sometimes you got to wait for things to load up. You see how incredibly glossy this is? This is way too glossy to be used. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in, I want one part to be not glossy at all, and I want one to be really glossy. So I'm going to change this to 1 and 1 to 0. I'm going to Alt, unclick these, and I want it to run off the mask. I'm going to drag, and I'm going to put this into roughness. I'm going to drag, plug this into my base color. Getting way too shiny. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, instead of 0 roughness in some spots and 1 in others, I'm going to say that I want a 0.8. Let's go with 0.5. Let's go with 0.1. I'm going to turn this up, and I'm going to say this to 1. There we go. You can see the difference between the two materials. This was super glossy, and now the center is 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that. I'm going to put this at 0. Let's see what we get. Because building materials is about practice, and I don't want them to be that glossy. I'm going to say I want them to be let's go over here and let's put this at 0.7 because we want it to be shiny, we want it to work. We want it to feel metallic but not overly. There we're getting some metal, but it's still perfect if you look at the specularity. So what I'm going to do is instead of plugging in these, I'm going to plug in too glossy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply, and materials are an art. You just have to practice with them. I'm going to hold down M and bring up a multiply, and I'm going to say I want, hold Alt to cut that, drag that onto that, and I'm going to say I want you to multiply that times this so that it combines all these pixels by 0.5. That lowers their brightness by 0.5 because it's kind of a division operation. And I'm going to turn that up. I'm going to say 0.1. Let's go to 1. See where we're going. Too high. I'm going to go to -2. Way too glossy. I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to add a lerp. A to B. Seven. There, we're getting a better material, and I'm going to hit save. Now there's a lot of work that we can do to go into these materials, and I know this seems complicated, but as we're doing it, we'll be working more and more until we figure it out. Once I've hit saved, hit X, and alright, so now we're going to go through, and we've saved. Now our material's been updated, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a duplicate of it by holding down Alt and dragging instead of Shift like 3ds Max. And just like 3ds Max, W, E, and R, rotate, move, scale, I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees down. And I'm just going to use this as the base floor. You'll have more pieces, and I'm just going to scoot it out, make sure it's level. And if you see, this is moving based on a grid, but it's moving such small increments. I'm going to change this. I'm going to change it to 50. And what that does is change the base grid, and the more I move this up, the easier it is to snap pieces together who are built on the grid. So I'm going to take this piece, duplicate it, and I don't want just this pattern, so I'm going to flip this object over. And this will be 10 too far down once it flips, so I've got to switch this to 10 and drag it up 2. Go back to 100. And now I'm going to select these. I'm just going to hold down Alt, duplicate it over. I'm just going to put down a basic ground so we can look at it. So we have some place to walk as our character. Hold down Control to select. And if I hold down Alt and hold down Shift and drag, it'll drag me as well, like the camera. Make one more. I'll explain what all these bounding boxes and things are later, but I want to get just to the point. Click off of that. You don't want to delete any of these things. I'll explain what they are as we get to them, but I've got my wall. I've got my materials set up. And what I need to do is I need to play this. I'm going to drag out one more and I'm going to flip it over so I can look at my material to see how it's working. And I'm going to say build, and by clicking on build, I'm going to say click build. It's going to build all the lighting into this, and that means it's going to take those second set of UV maps that we made. It's going to figure out where the light hits them, and it's going to make a second picture, but it's just a black and white picture showing where the shadows should be on the objects. Now the shadows can't move after they're saved, and that's how it saves so much memory. It compresses all the textures and it compresses the shadows, and so nothing else can change. Now this is saying there's a map check error, but as soon as we get done with this, this will disappear. What we're going to be doing, see, no errors. I'm just going to hit X, and now I'm going to hit play. Move my cursor into the middle while it loads up, and I fell through the world. Now this is something to easily fix. I'm going to click on my character, and I'm going to drag him up just to where he's not quite on the ground. Your character should be 70 meters tall, 70 inches tall, but instead this character is 180 inches. That's why we have to change the grid setup in 3ds Max. Now I click, drag right down, and you see, because of the walls that I built, because of how I built collision, we can go through. And what we're going to do is use these basic assets to build ourselves a level. Now, what you can do is go on the floor, and if you jump off, just hit escape to leave. Now, all of your assets are here. Everything in layers that you can turn off. And so once you're done with this, you can hit screenshot and save these inside of Photoshop just on your keyboard. It should be screenshot. Click it, paste it into Photoshop, show that you've done, and make sure that you go in and file and save all, and then save that into your Unreal directory inside of your folders that you've set up inside your sci-fi level. You should have all the objects, including the one that's sideways. But once you've done this, click these objects, drag these are just textures, and drag them inside your textures folder. Say move here. Take your material, drag inside your materials. Where'd you go? Maps. Oh, change that to materials. Right click, rename. Right click, rename. And I'm going to click wall and drag that in my assets. Move here. And what this allows me to do is to double click on just the assets and have all my building things so I can drag them out and just quickly place them. You're going to be building your level and taking pictures of it so that I can actually see everything that you've done. We're going to be building more and more complicated structures, and you're going to see what actually really complicated assets look like. But I want to start out with these building block assets, and once you realize this is how games are built, you're going to be able to, whenever you play games and do animations, you're going to see this kind of stuff all the time. This is it without the decoration. Alright, hope that helped. I'll be back for the third video.